Have you ever met someone who doesn't seem to know the difference between fact and opinion? Or maybe it's only their opinions that they confuse with facts. But they can absolutely never be wrong. Their way is the only correct way to think, feel, or believe. And if you don't agree, well, you're stupid, brainwashed, or just plain wrong. We all know someone like this, but it's even worse when that person is in your family, or maybe even worse than that, when they're your partner. My name is Christina, and I help people unravel the truth and get back to themselves after all the gaslighting and toxicity that happens in these relationships. And in this video, we're exploring one particular brand of toxicity that is as frustrating as it is damaging. So we're covering 7 ways toxic people use morality to control you. Starting with number 1, which is one of the most infuriating, if you ask me. But more than that, it is also so rampant in our society right now that there's even a new name for it. It's called whataboutism. And can you guess what I'm talking about from the name alone? If not, let me give you an example. So I made a video about how social media is traumatizing us and keeping us in fear and outrage. And I did this after we watched, and mostly without our consent, a man get assassinated right before our eyes. And the comment section got interesting. So one commenter in particular was absolutely flabbergasted that I could make a video about this and not about children dying in Palestine. This is whataboutism, and it shows up everywhere these days. Oh, you're sad because you lost your job? Well, what about people who never even had a chance to work? Have you thought about them before posting your feelings? And oh my goodness, your favorite celebrity died? Well, boo-hoo. What about the children who are starving around the world? I don't see you posting about them. Whataboutism is meant to make you feel guilty for caring about something that isn't up to someone else's standards. It also implies that if you care about this one thing, you do not care about the other. And it is so incredibly toxic and manipulative. Can we just let people talk about being sad, angry, or outraged without implying that they're doing it wrong? This leaves me wondering how anyone gets to feel so morally superior that they think that this behavior is okay. It's not. Because if you notice, it's a way for them to dismiss you and your concerns while putting themselves on a moral pedestal. And we're going to talk more about this in a little bit. But now we're going to talk about moral high grounding. Because once a morally superior person has you questioning yourself, they will absolutely double down with this next move. And I think the best way to understand this is, again, through example. So we've all known someone who claims to be blunt and honest, but really they're just kind of a jerk. So imagine you plan a dinner to introduce your friend to a new person you're dating. And after dinner, you ask your friend what they think. And at first it seems complimentary, but it quickly turns. So it goes something like this. Oh, I absolutely think they are a perfect fit for you because you're both super awkward and you both look a lot older than you actually are. And I know that was a very specific example, and I'm giving you this one because it actually happened to me. And no, I don't hang out with this person anymore. But this is the kind of person who just wants to be mean and hide behind the moral high ground of being honest and saying the things that other people are afraid to say, according to them. But the reality is that the honesty you're getting from someone like this doesn't even cross most people's minds, because most people aren't that cruel. But then you're left kind of speechless because they're framing their cruelty as honesty. And so you're wondering if everyone is thinking the same thing, and maybe everyone else is just too nice to say it to your face. So let's look at another example. So let's say you get offered your dream job, but you have to move a few thousand miles away for it. Your mom instantly goes into damage control mode, telling you what's wrong with the job and the city that it's in. She forwards news articles about every crime that has ever been committed there and tells you how this move would be the biggest mistake of your life. And she's telling you that she's going to these great lengths because she cares so much about you. but our motives are purely selfish. So people like this can lie, manipulate, insult you, or completely bulldoze your boundaries. But somehow it's always for a noble reason. And you can't win with people like this because the more you try to explain yourself, the deeper you fall into their moral maze. Every path leads back to them being a good and selfless person. So the next tactic is one that looks like kindness on the surface. But if you've ever been on the receiving end of it, you know how fake it feels. It's called performative empathy. And this is when someone acts deeply compassionate, but it's all for show. So they don't care about you. They care about being seen as the kind of person who cares. So imagine a friend who posts these long emotional paragraphs about standing with victims of bullying, but they're the same person who gossips behind the scenes about you and other people in your friend group behind your backs. Or someone hurts you, and instead of apologizing, they post a vague quote on Instagram about learning to love people for where they're at. It's like they're using other people's pain, including yours, as a prop to make themselves look enlightened. And the worst part is, performative empathy tends to get rewarded. People see it and go, wow, they're such a good person. While you're sitting there wondering how they can manage to look so loving in public and actually be so cold in private. Real empathy happens internally. It's not about optics, but for the morally superior, empathy becomes a stage, and your pain becomes their spotlight. So now let's talk about virtue signaling. This is when someone gets up on a soapbox and exaggerates their involvement in an issue or cause to seem morally superior. So this might look like someone volunteering at a soup kitchen maybe once a quarter for the sole purpose of proving they care more than you do. Or it may look like a friend who isn't shy about telling you how they'd never let their imaginary kids have screen time because they would absolutely be more active parents. And the implication is that they're better than you in this scenario, where they're just actually pretending to know what it's like to be a parent. And this reminds me of one of my favorite sayings. It goes, I was a perfect parent before I had kids. There are so many people who think they are morally superior when they don't actually know what it's like to walk a mile in your shoes. So another way to recognize that someone is absolutely virtue signaling is they're putting down the people they're helping in the same breath they're using to brag about their good deeds. So this may sound something like, oh, I love giving my time to serve the poor souls who are less fortunate than me. And virtue signaling is actually the real point behind whataboutism. So with whataboutism, a toxic person will imply that you are caring about the wrong topic, while at the same time implying that the things that they share actually hold some moral high ground. So someone who truly has empathy isn't going to try to randomly rank issues or causes for no reason whatsoever. And whenever you can spot virtue signaling, you can bet that performative empathy is also at play. You see, most people whose empathy is true and genuine share things when they feel they have something to add to the conversation. People who are virtue signaling are performing empathy. And so they try to find the causes that they can claim hold some moral high ground. And then they can lash out at everyone who doesn't perform empathy in the same way they do. So now let's talk about what it looks like when the brand of morality they're using to control you is faith-based. So we're talking about performative faith. And this is when someone uses religion or spirituality basically as a costume. It's not about embodying love or grace. It's about looking holy. I'm sure you've probably met at least one person who shouts something like, love thy neighbor, and loves to quote Bible verses or other spiritual quotes that they think sound good or make them sound good. But this person who's shouting, love thy neighbor from the rooftops would never break bread with their actual neighbor because of their skin color, beliefs, or who they love. And when they do deem someone worthy of inviting for dinner, they'll gossip endlessly about them as soon as they get up from the table. And that's not faith, that is a performance. And these are the people who use faith like a weapon, telling you to forgive and turn the other cheek, while they hold grudges for so long, even crows are side-eyeing them. And let me tell you, I saw an article recently about how crows hold grudges so long, they even pass them down to their offspring. So let's be clear that someone who is performing faith is going to appoint themselves as some kind of moral referee. So they get to decide what's right, what's wrong, and who's going to hell for their choices. And they'll tell you, oh, God decides, but they'll preach their convictions so loudly that you'll think their name is God. And frankly, it seems they do too. But at its core, performative faith divides. And at least in my humble opinion, that's not what true faith should be about. Faith was never meant for us to judge, guilt, and police one another. Ultimately, faith should never be used as a weapon, but it all too often is. So now let's talk about a manipulation tactic that's a bit of a tongue twister, at least for me, but I know it's going to be super relatable to a lot of you. I'm talking about martyrdom manipulation. And this is when someone, usually someone who claims to love you the most, twists guilt into a weapon. So imagine you finally speak up about something that's been bothering you in your relationship. Maybe you ask for a little more respect or a little more effort. And you're not asking for the moon and the stars. You have a very reasonable request to be treated like a human being. But instead of hearing you out, they interrupt and fly into victim mode, saying things like, wow, I guess nothing I ever do is good enough for you. Or, I'm sorry, I can't be perfect like you. And then, in a blink of an eye, instead of being the person with a valid concern, you're the ungrateful one. They flip the script so fast that now you're the bad guy for wanting something more. And that's how martyrdom manipulation works. Whenever you try to set a boundary, they frame it as a personal attack. And they make you feel guilty for the very thing you were actually right to ask for. So now you're stuck defending your character and maybe even apologizing for hurting someone else's feelings who would never do the same for you. And what we're talking about here is a guilt-based loyalty program where they get to be the wounded saint and you always pay the price for it. So the last tactic we're covering here is one that can make even the most grounded person question their sanity. We're talking about moral absolutism. And this is when someone takes one disagreement or one honest conversation and spins it into a sweeping judgment of your character. So you bring up something that has hurt you, and instead of hearing it, they say, you always make me the villain, or you never let anything go. And this one combines martyrdom manipulation with moral absolutism. So they might say, I guess I can never get anything right. And now you're not talking about the issue anymore. You're talking about whether or not you're a good person for bringing it up. By painting you as unforgiving or overly negative, they shift the moral spotlight away from what they did and onto your reaction to it. So now, instead of blatantly painting themselves as victim, they paint you as the meanie who can't help but hyperfocus on every single little mistake they make. And all the while, they're implying that they're a happy-go-lucky person just trying to live their lives, while they're stuck with you, who sucks the joy out of everything. So if you're watching this and realizing how much of yourself you've lost trying to keep the peace with someone like this, I want you to know you're not alone. This happens in every single relationship like this. And this kind of manipulation gets in your head so deeply that even when you see it, you still doubt yourself. And that's exactly what I help people work through in coaching, getting back to yourself after a relationship that has made you doubt so much of who you are and what's real. So if you're ready to stop questioning your own goodness and start seeing yourself clearly again, click here to work with me one-on-one. And if this kind of nice on the surface manipulation feels familiar, you'll definitely want to watch this video right here, where I go even deeper into how people use charm, empathy, and moral posturing to keep control, even when they don't look toxic at all on the surface.